What is going on, Rivian fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to give you an overview of a lot of the bullish signals that's happening with Rivian, what they kind of mean, at least in the short term, and where I see things going ultimately. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So currently it is red, 0.21%, but for the most part, it had a fairly good rally all the way to $23.71. A little bit lower for volume, so 11.04 million shares being traded. 21.86 million is the average. And these are all the transactions that have occurred so far in the secondary market, over $100,000. So kind of it's fairly good, but like I mentioned, it's just a little bit lower for volume, unfortunately. But as far as dark pool, very hot today, no different than any other day. This is linked to shorting frequently, so I'll give you an overview of that. But starting off with options, so $3.03 million in calls being purchased versus $2.29 million in puts. So compared to previous days, there is a little bit more of an increase in puts because right now Rivian is on a little bit more of a teetering edge as far as the technicals. Generally right now it's looking bullish. But of course, with some bad economic data potentially coming out, that could cause it to trend down. And as far as right now, with it being at $23.28, it's exactly on that very strong P, so the pivot point right now. So of course, majority of the day it was actually above that. We'll see exactly where it does land, whether it stays between this S1 and the pivot or the pivot and the R1. So definitely something to watch for the remaining part of the day. And looking on the technicals, it is in the higher percentile of the Bollinger Band and above the 50-day moving average. But over the last several days, it has actually wanted to try to break down below that 50-day moving average, as you can kind of tell over the last looks like 4 days or 5 days, give or take. So who knows exactly how today will turn out, but this is why the options is having a little bit more puts based on this. But still, as it stands right now, if it can actually hold above the 50-day moving average, then yeah, generally things are going to be looking fairly good. And as far as at the time of doing this video, there hasn't been any SEC filings, no press releases, nothing like that. So it is just following the broader market. A lot of good data has been coming out, coming from articles and just general from Q2. So based on all the 13 Fs that have come out, obviously it is now all concluded, but based on all of them combined, there was a grand total of 16.26 million calls being purchased within, like I mentioned, that Q2, just by hedge funds. That is absolutely huge, up 6.34% from the quarter prior. And based on all 13 F filers, 37.82 million call options being purchased, and that's down about 7.15% from the quarter prior. So options are a very good way to play Rivian, but keep in mind, I am not a financial advisor. You guys always do your own due diligence. And when it comes down to options, it is just merely a sentiment. But a lot of people do generally like to look at what is happening through options just to give you a good overview of kind of the future forecast. And based on this, big money clearly does see a lot of good upside with Rivian. And based on a lot of the latest articles that's been coming out for Rivian, a lot of them are actually fairly good. Even this, so 3 no-brainer stocks I'd buy right now without hesitation. And one is obviously Rivian. So not the first or second, but number 3 right here. So they're talking on how it's 70% below its IPO price, and that was from November 2021. I wouldn't really take that with a grain of salt because, of course, I think Rivian went way too high from its IPO. I think that was a little bit more of a FOMO, but in here, there's a lot of good valid points. So it does have 3 different types of vehicles. So the truck, the SUV, and of course the whole delivery van for Amazon. So it does have a lot of good sources of revenue. And within the last couple earnings, they did say, and will most likely continue to say, that they have huge amount of demand for all of their vehicles. And most likely as well, either mid to late 2024, this is when they're going to be actually obtaining their profitability. So that's definitely a very pivotal part for any stock in general. So once they usually reach that mark, this is where a lot more institutions rush in because of course they've kind of proven themselves. And once again, that's kind of what this article does state. And there's also another good article that does come out kind of comparing itself to Rivian and as far as the whole price war, but ultimately it does say the exact same thing, that Rivian is on its way to profitability, and just generally based on its IPO, it's had a very volatile ride, but generally they are actually getting the much needed results. And based on this, they're talking and referring to the whole PS ratio. So as it stands right now, it is currently 7.4. That's what the current future is 4. And in both cases, compared to a lot of other stocks, with the exception of Tesla, of course, I think that is kind of a very good screaming deal. And this is why over the last little bit, a lot of analysts have seen Rivian in a positive light. And obviously I'm not going to go over all these because I've covered these in a lot of my other videos. The latest one though was 12 days ago by Needham, and that was Chris Pierce, who does only have a 29% success rating. So kind of take that with a grain of salt, but they do have a $31 price target. But one thing to note is looking right here. So the latest Morningstar report, which I do believe was updated last Thursday, if I remember correctly, it does show $35.63 being the fair market value for Rivian. So once again, I do feel that is also something to factor in. But when it comes down to dark pool, like I mentioned, a very hot exchange for Rivian. And of course, when it comes down to that, that's very much used by obviously shorts. So I'll give you an overview of this. And as I've said in the past, I'm just bringing this up as a benchmark and as a tool. I do not, and I'm definitely not saying that Rivian is going to have a squeeze, because it definitely won't. Unless there's something comes out and says like Apple is buying Rivian, or who knows. But again, take that with a grain of salt. So short score is currently 59. Utilization is 28.13%. And as far as right now, shorts are kind of returning 410,000 shares. 12.99% of the free float is being shorted, and 85.87 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow is just complete pennies, like I've already said in the past. So 0.80% is the average. So once again, that's kind of a good summarization of all the data points. But like I mentioned, a lot of them are very bullish, and especially with the technicals so far holding. This is where I do feel that in general, it could trend up significantly higher. And a lot of these fib levels between the pivot points are very vast. So you're gonna kind of have to accept a lot of volatility, but I do feel that the next step for Rivian is going to be that $26 mark once again. So we'll kind of see how high it does go generally, but based on the options activity as well, even if you look back over the last, because that was just the one day, even if we look over the last 7 days, $42 million in calls being purchased versus 24 in puts. So obviously on a larger scale, and it's been like this for a while, a lot of people are assuming that Rivian is going to go up. So let me know your thoughts on that. Give yourself a shout out if you have been buying, selling, holding, what you've been doing with Rivian in the comments below. On a side note, if you are looking for a lot of good compiled information, such as Morningstar reports and analyst ratings, take a look at Interactive Brokers in the description below and also the comments, because all of this information is free. All you have to do is sign up. So it's pretty easy stuff. So like I said, link in the description below and also the comments. And one final thing I just wanted to share with you, there is another broker, and all you have to do is sign up for another free account, but this one you throw $100 at it, you get 5 free stocks. So this one is a crazy deal. Each stock can be valued up to $2,000. So this is a very good win-win in my opinion. Both Moomoo and Interactive Brokers, I do have a link to them in the description below and all the comments. With that said, I appreciate y'all watching.